Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Do not get confused. This is an episode of the FBI in Peace and War. This is not This Is Your FBI, which was an ABC show. This was a CBS show based on Frederick L. Collins's book of the same name, and they used that as a jumping-off point. Now, I can't tell you how many of the stories that aired on This Is Your FBI, or the FBI in Peace and War, came from the book, but they say it was inspired by the book. So let's listen to an episode entitled Ladies in Lace. This originally broadcast January 20th, 1957.
The FBI in Peace and War. Another great story based on Frederick L. Collins' copyrighted book, The FBI in Peace and War. Drama, thrills, action. Tonight's story, Ladies in Lace.
Bertie! Bertie, I'm home. Clarice, come see what I bought for us.
Oh, I was beginning to get quite frantic.
About me?
Well, of course, you've been gone for almost 2 hours. New York is such a large and frightening city. All that traffic. Why, it's terrifying, Clarice. It's simply terrifying.
Bertie, I'm all right. You mustn't get in such a tizzy about me, dear. You worry too much.
And why shouldn't I worry about my lovely, devoted sister? And didn't Papa always say, Bertie, you look after Clarice. You take care of your little sister. It's a cruel world, and she needs your protection.
Really, Bertie, I am over 21.
Just the same.
And it's been 40 years since dear sweet Papa passed on. Now, see what I bought. Well, Bertie?
Clarice.
The very best Wilshire bone china.
Oh, I declare, the most delicate teapot I've ever seen. Simply the most delicate. Must have been very expensive.
Oh, you're angry with me?
No, dear, but our funds are running low.
Oh, I just couldn't resist it, Bertie. Besides, I couldn't let the young man think I was mere shabby gentility.
Young man?
The gentleman I met in the chinaware shop, and he was so kind. He dropped me off in a cab.
Oh?
Such a pleasant young man, so considerate and protective. His name is Frank Carson. I invited him for tea tomorrow. I hope you don't mind, Bertie.
Now, that all depends.
He's in Wall Street.
Really?
His father's the head of a brokerage house.
Well, in that case, he's surely welcome.
Bertie, you remember George Walton?
Oh, the nice young man who asked Papa for your hand.
Yes. Mr. Carson reminds me so much of George. The shape of his head, his soft smile. You know, Bertie, it's the only thing I ever regretted Papa doing. Taking all George's money.
But, Clarice, we had to survive more than just like common folks. We were the Jessups of New Orleans. Papa had standards to maintain.
I suppose, but how different things might have been. Bertie.
Yes?
May we wear our Madeira lace collars and cuffs when Mr. Carson joins us for tea tomorrow?
Why, certainly. After all, we must make the best possible impression on Mr. Carson.
Madeira lace always makes me feel so imposing, so regal.
As Papa said, don't you girls ever forget for one instant that you're the Jessups of New Orleans. Hold your heads high and walk like queens. And most of all, maintain your standards no matter what the cost to other folks.
It takes all kinds to make a criminal world. The Jessup sisters had moved about it in bunco circles for years. With the passage of time, except for 2 brief pauses spent in prison, Clarice and Bertie Jessup perfected their trade to the point where they operated without variation the same swindle. Step 1. A likely victim was selected, always a man of means. Step 2, he was instilled with gentlemanly respect for these sweet, harmless ladies who seemed as delicately old world as the lace they wore.
Papa always said clothes definitely do not make the lady, unless they're trimmed with Madeira lace.
Well, from all you've told me, your father must have been a fine and sensitive gentleman.
Papa was a Jessup.
A New Orleans Jessup.
He would have liked you, Mr. Carson. You're just the sort of gentleman Papa relished.
Why, thank you, Miss Birdie.
Yes, indeed. Papa would have really enjoyed taking you into his circle of friends. More tea?
Oh, thank you, Miss Clarice. No, I must be going. I've been here almost 2 hours already.
Oh, I declare, that long? Seems like old times, doesn't it, Clarice, at home when we used to sit with Papa on the veranda and listen to the birds chirping in the bayou.
Yes, remembrance of things past.
Oh, it must have been lovely and peaceful there.
Papa said a lady should never be prideful, but let me tell you, Mr. Carson, the Jessup estate was the showplace of the country.
And you've never gone back after selling it just to see it?
Oh, we didn't sell it, Mr. Carson.
Oh?
We couldn't do that to Papa's memory.
Every inch of that soil was holy to Papa, even the swampland.
So we've just held on to it, no matter what.
Oh, with the cost of living today, it isn't easy, but somehow we manage without selling off the Jessup place.
There aren't any of your breed left in this world. Nowadays, everybody seems to worship the almighty dollar. Everybody's out to take everybody else.
Oh, the horrible thought.
But unfortunately true. Well, ladies, thank you for one of the most pleasant and refreshing afternoons of my life.
The pleasure was ours, Mr. Carson.
And do come and have tea with us again.
May I?
Next Saturday, same time.
Oh, I'll be here. And thank you again.
Thank you for making two old ladies very happy. Well, Bertie, you were right. He's every inch a gentleman. But remember what Papa said.
Girls, sentiment is an admirable quality in womanhood, but never, never mix it with business. So, we'll get in touch with Mr. Hopkins immediately.
Yes, you phone him, dear, while I brew some nice fresh tea for us.
The Jessup sisters played their swindle game without variation. When steps 1 and 2 had been completed, step 3 was set in motion. For this phase, an accessory was called in.
My commission will be the same as usual, ladies.
Of course, Mr. Hopkins.
And the transaction with your Mr. Carson, the same?
Naturally, the very same.
As Papa said, times may change, but human nature never does. So girls, never forsake the old for the new.
And Papa knew what he was talking about. Papa's record was perfect. Not one arrest.
Yeah, very well, ladies, very well. Just as long as I get the percentage legitimately due me.
Mr. Hopkins, just what do you mean?
Well, I had an idea that I may have been done out of my proper share in our last venture.
I declare, how dare you?
No, I'm not saying you did shortchange me. And I'm not saying you didn't. It was just a notion I had.
Mr. Hopkins, please have the good grace to remember that Bertie and I are not just common ordinary thieves. We, sir, are Jessups.
In addition to Madeira lace, the Jessup sisters showed a particular favoritism for fine chinaware. It was this second weakness which put the Bureau on their trail. On the morning of June 6, 1954, Agent Reynolds came into my office with the lead.
Steve, the check was forwarded to the Bureau for a routine analysis.
A bank check dated May 15th, made payable to an Evanston, Illinois chinaware store, had bounced. The check had been signed by Clarice Jessup.
$184 down the drain. Believe me, gentlemen, I would rather have broken that china with my own hands than lose the money that way.
We know how you feel, Mr. Cronin. Now, you said Jessup had made other purchases previously.
Quite a few.
And always the same brand of china.
My best imported product.
The trade name?
Wilshire. It's made by an English firm. The very best. And the most expensive.
Naturally, you were never suspicious.
About her? Don't be ridiculous. She looked every inch a lady, the reliable old-fashioned kind, particularly the way she dressed.
Down to the lace collar.
That's right, but I guess it was as phony as she.
Not the lace collar. Genuine Madeira.
It should choke her.
Getting back to the chinaware, she remarked you said that she'd own only one brand.
That's right, Wilshire.
And previously, she'd always paid cash.
Yes, I suppose that was to build up confidence.
I don't know.
Well, what do you mean you don't know? That's the way these crooks operate, don't they?
The Jessup sisters have always stuck to their one particular trade, and it doesn't include passing bum checks.
Well, it looks like they've started another one, and it had to be my luck that I was their first customer.
No, Mr. Cronin, I'm afraid you were just an emergency victim. They were probably running low on funds.
Well, not a good that does me.
Believe me, it'll do their next victim a great deal less good.
Back to Ladies in Lace in just a moment.
January 20th, 1957, the FBI in Peace and War on Classic Radio Theater. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Now, previously here on Classic Radio Theater, we've talked about a number of shows that dealt with espionage and how the FBI didn't work with them like they wanted them to. One of which was a show called Counter Spy. Phillips H. Lord had a certain, and this is a quote from Hal Erickson's book, From Radio to the Big Screen, Hollywood Films Featuring Broadcast Personalities and Programs. This was published back in 2014. Phillips H. Lord said he had a certain amount of difficulty with J. Edgar Hoover over comments in Gangbusters, and because of that, his show Counter Spy was in no way, shape, or form created to be the FBI in a fictional basis. It, in fact, was an entirely different agency, or as the kids would call it today, the Counter Spy organization was definitely not the FBI, but they were. Now, the FBI in Peace and War, another situation, Louis Pelletier and Frederick L. Collins putting the show together. Louis Pelletier wrote a lot of the scripts and helped with the adaptation. Now, they say it was not adapted, but inspired. And that, I think, is the key word in that, inspired. You're not going to see these stories in the FBI in Peace and War book, but what you will see is a number of FBI stories that may or may not have ever happened. We'll see what they do. And by the way, while This Is Your FBI was quite a good show, it's willing to note that This Is Your FBI, the FBI in Peace and War, was a rating success, primarily because it was on CBS. Although Mutual may have had more radio stations and ABC may have had more radio stations, they were always smaller and less, they didn't have the audience that CBS had. The show was in the top 10 radio shows of 1955, and you saw the FBI in Peace and War number 8. And all of the shows that were in the top 10 were either CBS or NBC. Jack Benny, Amos and Andy, People Are Funny, Our Miss Brooks, Lux Radio Theater, My Little Margie, Dragnet, the FBI in Peace and War, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, and Groucho Marx. So there you go. Let's get back to the FBI in Peace and War, as it was originally broadcast January 20th, 1957.
And now, Act 2 of tonight's story, Ladies in Lace.
The check of lodging places in Evanston revealed that the Jessup sisters had occupied an apartment in a conservative middle-class hotel, and that the day after the bum bank draft was passed, they'd moved out bag and baggage, china and old lace. But we had one break.
Destination New York, Steve.
Agent Reynolds had questioned a cab driver whose stand was outside the hotel. He definitely recalled driving them to the depot and helping them aboard a New York-bound train. We shifted our base of operations to New York City.
Papa always warned us against consorting with strangers in a big northern city, but of course he didn't know you, Mr. Carson.
Miss Bertie.
Yes?
About that man who offered you the money for your land.
Walter Hopkins.
Yes. What do you know about him?
Well, only that he seems a proper businessman.
Our looks are deceiving, you know, ladies.
That's what Papa always says.
And he said he was only interested in buying the swampland.
Just the Bayou section of our estate.
$10,000 for that useless swampland. It seemed more than generous.
Oh, too generous, I'd say offhand.
Mr. Carson, whatever do you mean?
I mean, Miss Bertie, I smell a rat.
What?
I mean, it's a mighty strange thing to offer so much for worthless swampland, unless it's not as worthless as it apparently appears.
I declare.
Ladies.
Yes?
With your permission, I'd like to have a talk with this Mr. Hopkins. There's just the possibility that someone is trying to pull a fast one here.
Immediately upon our arrival in New York, Agent Reynolds and I began a checkout of all stores in the area dealing in the expensive imported china. We felt that this would be the shortest route between us and the Jessup sisters.
Just keep in mind that Clarice and Bertie Jessup are close personal friends of mine. That's why I'm here, Mr. Hopkins.
Well, I don't recall their mentioning you, Carson.
Well, if you have any doubts, why don't you phone them? They'll tell you I'm acting in their behalf.
Look here, just what do you want?
The question is, Mr. Hopkins, what do you want?
Well, I believe I made my purpose clear to Miss Bertie and Miss Clarice.
I'm not at all sure it is clear.
No? What could be clearer than a bona fide offer of $10,000 for that swampland?
That's the point.
What?
Your bid for that bayou terrain is way out of line.
Oh, now, don't tell me it's worth more.
On the contrary, far less.
What?
Frankly, Mr. Hopkins, your offer is very suspicious.
Now, you watch what you say, Carson. I'm a reputable businessman.
Don't try to outbluff me, Mr. Hopkins. I happen to know some of the ins and outs of business. I'm not a babe in the woods. I'm not the Jessup sisters.
Now, see here. I'm not wasting any more of my time talking to you. I'm dealing directly with the Jessup sisters and not with you.
You'll deal through me, or you won't deal at all.
Is that right?
It most certainly is.
Well, I'll see about that.
You're welcome to try. Good day.
Mr. Carson, wait a minute. Wait.
Yes?
Now, look, there's no reason we can't talk this over like sane gentlemen, is there?
Well...
What do you say we start patching our fences with a little drink first?
I prefer a drink after a deal is consummated, not before.
Oh. Then, straight to business, eh?
And the facts, straight.
You mean why I made such a generous offer for that worthless swampland?
Why?
Straight. Last week oil was discovered on the adjoining property.
Oil? So that's it?
That's it, definitely.
A very good reason for your generous offer to the Jessup sisters.
And now, Mr. Carson, I'm going to make a very generous offer to you.
Our checkout on the China West stores brought quick and ripe fruit. The proprietor of a Midtown Fifth Avenue shop had some of the information we were seeking.
Yes, sir. I serve Miss Jessup personally. Would you mind telling me why the FBI is interested in her?
It's a long story and a long series of swindles perpetrated by her and her sister.
Her? A swindler? Why, I'd never dreamed.
Nor would most people.
Such a delicate appreciation of Wilshire china.
And a fast buck.
She was in here last?
A week ago Friday, she purchased a Wilshire teapot.
You delivered it where?
We didn't. She took it along with her.
Oh.
But I expect her to return.
Oh?
Yes, she was interested in buying a sugar and creamer set. We were out of stock. I told her we expected a shipment in this week, and I'd put a set aside for her.
And she said she'll be in to pick it up?
She said she'd be in tomorrow afternoon, definitely. I suppose you gentlemen will want to be on hand, too?
We'll be here. Definitely.
And ladies, that's the full and complete story. There's oil on your property, and he offered me a percentage if I could convince you to sell.
Well, I declare.
So now you know the reason Hopkins' offer was so generous.
What a vile man. What a simply vile person. Thank heavens there are men such as you still in the world, Mr. Carson.
As Papa said, girls never fret when dealing with a basically honest man. He'll always reward you in the end by showing his true colors.
And down through the years, we've always profited by this advice of Papa's and have always been rewarded.
And now we want to reward you, Mr. Carson.
But I did nothing but tell you the truth.
Oh, I'm sure that Clarice is as willing as I am to turn that bayou land over to you.
What?
Yes, Bertie, I declare I am as willing as you.
But that land, that oil, it'll be worth a fortune.
Our needs are simple. Your life is just beginning.
No, I couldn't think of it.
We want you to have it.
I couldn't accept. I just couldn't.
We insist.
No.
Bertie, dear, I think we are embarrassing Mr. Carson. Perhaps he would feel easier if we let him pay for the land.
But
what it was worth when we had it assessed after Papa passed on.
You mean that $2,000 assessment?
Yes. I'm sure that would make things more comfortable for you, Mr. Carson.
$2,000? That's ridiculous. Why, Hopkins offered you 10, and it's worth 100 times that. Why...
Oh, they've got the con down good, these Jessup sisters. January 20th, 1957, the FBI in Peace and War. Thank you so much for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The conclusion next, here on your favorite radio station. Now on Classic Radio Theater, the conclusion of the FBI in Peace and War, January 20th, 1957.
No, I wouldn't think of offering you less if I did offer anything.
All right, Mr. Carson, then. If you insist, we'll accept $10,000. Just give us the money, and we'll consider the matter closed.
$10,000 in cash.
Oh, I declare, Clarice, isn't green a lovely, warm color?
Oh, if Papa were only here to enjoy this moment with us.
It's all right, Clarice. I know he's up there looking down on his girls and smiling. We better start packing.
But the sugar and cream I ordered, I promised that gentleman I'd be in this afternoon to pick them up. It'll only take a few minutes, Bertie.
Agent Reynolds and I staked out near the Fifth Avenue Chinaware shop and waited.
Here she comes, Steve.
Clarice Jessup showed up as expected. It would have been simple enough to make an arrest on the spot, but we wanted both sisters in tow. Agent Reynolds waited outside while I entered the shop to set up our own operation.
It isn't often as a businessman interested in fine china. You are a businessman, aren't you, Mr. Stevens?
Well, yes, in a sense. I deal mostly with the government.
Federal?
Solely.
Sort of contract work, I take it.
Sort of.
Big contract?
Well...
You big businessmen are much too modest.
It isn't that. It's just that we have to be careful not to let anything out prematurely. So much is involved at times.
Oh, I've always been fascinated to know just what goes on behind closed doors in deals like yours, Mr. Stevens.
Oh, I could tell a few stories.
My sister Bertie and I'd be just thrilled to hear them. There's so little excitement in our humdrum lives.
Oh, now you're being modest, I'm sure.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes?
If you could spare the time to take tea with Bertie and me tomorrow afternoon, we'd consider it both an honor and a pleasure.
You just tell me where you live. And believe me, Miss Jessup, the pleasure will be all mine.
No, Clarice, definitely not.
But Bertie...
I've already made our reservations on a morning train.
But he's in government contract.
Clarice, I'm surprised at you. Don't you remember what Papa said? Girls, after you consummate a deal, never let the moss grow under your feet. In other words, get out and get out fast. Now, you wouldn't want Papa to stop smiling down on us, would you, dear?
No, Bertie.
Oh, that must be the bellhop. I asked them to send our baggage up from the storage room.
I'll go, dear.
Miss Jessup,
Why,
I guess this comes as sort of a surprise, eh?
What is it, Therese?
Bertie, this is Mr. Stevens, the gentleman I was telling you so much about.
How do you do? I've brought a friend along. This is Mr. Reynolds. He's sort of a business partner.
Ladies?
Mr. Reynolds was anxious to join in.
But you weren't expected until tomorrow.
Sorry, we couldn't wait.
As a matter of fact, we waited much too long already.
Therese.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes?
The police.
FBI.
I declare.
So that's what you meant by federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Deceiving my sister that way, sir. You are no gentleman.
I'm sorry, Bertie. If it hadn't been for that China creamer and sugar.
Now, don't you fret, dear.
Do you really forgive me?
Of course.
All right, ladies. Let's go.
Mr. Stevens, please, just one thing.
What's that?
Would you permit us a moment to dress ourselves properly for the occasion? There's some very fine Madeira lace, and we wouldn't feel suitably dressed unless we wore it. Would we, Bertie dear?
The Jessup sisters made a full and complete confession. Their accomplice, Walter Hopkins, was apprehended shortly thereafter. All three were brought to trial and threw themselves on the mercy of the court. Because of their advanced age, Clarice and Bertie Jessup received reduced sentences of 5 years each. They are now serving those sentences in a federal women's penitentiary, where their simple dress makes them anything but ladies in lace.
Alice Frost played the part of Clarice Jessup. Agnes Young was Bertie Jessup. This radio dramatization for the FBI in Peace and War was written by Ed Adamson. These programs are produced and directed by Betty Mandeville. All names and characters used on the program are fictitious. Any similarity to persons living or dead is purely coincidental. This program is based upon Frederick L. Collins' copyrighted book, The FBI in Peace and War, and the broadcast does not imply endorsement, authorization, or approval by the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
January 20th, 1957, the FBI in Peace and War on Classic Radio Theater. It's hard for me to call Claudia a soap opera because it is so light-hearted, but that's the only real designation unless you want to call it a continuing serial. You know, so many soap operas have so much over-the-top drama to it, and Claudia doesn't. Let's listen to this episode of the syndicated soap opera Claudia. This was broadcast January 20th, 1948.
Hello, Julia. Yoo-hoo. Claudia, darling, did I keep you waiting? Not at all. I just got here. Good. Let's go right in and see about my hats. Good. It'll just take me a moment, my sweet, and then we'll go to the hotel for a cup of tea. That'll be fine.
Mrs. Norton, good afternoon. We've been expecting you.
Good afternoon, Miss Eleanor. I've been trying to get down here for weeks. This is my sister-in-law, Mrs. David Norton.
Oh, so glad to meet you.
Hello.
Won't you sit down? You're looking very well, Mrs. Norton. Here's an ashtray. I'll tell Mr. Rowland you're here.
I would appreciate his coming right over.
I don't hardly see any hats around.
You don't?
Where I get hats, they're all over the place.
Well, hats are mostly made to order here.
Oh.
Claudia, why don't you get yourself a hat this afternoon?
Get one here?
This is the best place in New York. Roland and Francis have a superb winter collection.
But I don't need a hat. I've got a hat.
Which you're carrying in your hand.
That's where I always wear them. That's where they look best on me.
It's a very nice hat, but you can always use another.
I hate to ask, Julia, but are they...
No, they're not expensive here at all. For what you get, it's the cheapest place in town.
Oh.
Oh, what?
Well, it sounds terribly expensive.
You're a funny child. We'll ask Mr. Rowland what kind of hat you want.
He knows what I want?
Of course. He even knows what I want.
Oh, Mrs. Norton. One moment and I'll be right with you, Mrs. Norton.
Julia, I am not going to buy a hat. I don't think I want the kind of hat I want.
Well, Mrs. Norton, you're looking marvelous. Simply marvelous.
Thank you. This is my sister-in-law, Mrs. David Norton.
How do you do? So pleased to meet you. Well, now, hats, What kind of hats?
Every kind of hat.
I've got one special one that'll look drenchingly lovely on you. Really.
Drenchingly lovely? I don't think I'd mind that at all.
It sounds like a rain hat.
A rain of inspiration, perhaps. Now, Mrs. Norton, the model for this hat is in fuchsia and mauve. But I shall have it made for you in chartreuse and olive. Much better for you.
As you say.
Of course, the young Mrs. Norton here could wear the fuchsia and mauve, but...
I'm not buying a hat, thank you.
Well, you're making a fearful mistake. Well, I shall fetch it for you. You're really going to love it.
How much do you think it's going to cost, Julia?
Oh, between 85 and 110.
What?
Yes, that's right.
For heaven's sakes. That's a third of the price for having a baby.
Well, you can't compare prices that way, my sweet.
Why not? It's the same money, isn't it?
Well, here we are. I call this one Surprise.
It's very gay.
And why not, Mrs. Norton? You should be very gay. New York in the winter just cries for this hat. Here, let me put it on for you.
Oh, you're sure it's not too big a hat for me?
Too big. If anything, too small.
How do you like it, Claudia?
It doesn't look like a hat at all.
And what more could you ask of a hat than that? Well, Mrs. Norton, just look at yourself.
Well, yes, I see what you mean.
Really, it is. If I must say so myself, it is stunning.
Yes, but how many things have I got that I can wear it with?
This hat, with everything, with nothing. It would dress up a hat rack. Oh, yes, that is your hat.
I like it. It's very mad. What else have you got?
You may keep it on, Mrs. Norton. Yeah, I'll be right back. I want to glean the shelves and ransack every nook of inspiration for you, but it'll just take me a moment.
It's all right, don't hurry. Well, Claudia, you haven't said very much.
Don't you hate having someone put a hat on for you?
Usually, but I wouldn't know how some of these hats went on otherwise. Darling, why are you here? Are you sure you don't want to get a hat?
I'm sure.
David would love it.
I don't think so. David wants me to wear a sunbonnet.
A what?
A sunbonnet. Isn't that what milkmaids wear?
You don't look the least bit like a milkmaid, and don't let that husband of yours tell you that you do.
It's the farm, Julia, at Eastbrook. David wants to buy it.
Oh, might be rather nice to have for weekends. Eastbrook's a very chic community. There's Nancy Riddle, of course, and the Frosts and the Frailing Hyacinths.
But, Julia, this isn't for weekends, it's for good.
Bury yourself in the country at your age? Oh, Claudia, you mustn't let him do this. In the first place, it's probably not a good investment buying at the top of the market like this.
Oh.
Why don't you have David speak to Hartley about it? I'll discuss it with Hartley tonight, and tomorrow have David call, and they'll lunch together, and... Well, that may settle everything.
Oh, Julia, that would be wonderful. You don't know how much I appreciate this.
Nonsense. It's nothing at all. Men get this way, my dear. All they need is a little sense.
David's sensible, except for this. I suppose he wants it very much. You know, maybe that's why I've sort of not tried to talk him out of it, I guess. Only I didn't know it till now.
It's because you love David so much, you mean. Well, darling, that love is fine. But you can have it in the city, too. Hartley will settle everything tomorrow.
Well, here we are. If you saw these hats one at a time, you wouldn't think there could ever be another hat as beautiful. But we needn't fool each other, Mrs. Norton. So I brought you the 3 most beautiful of all.
Heavens, I won't be able to decide.
But don't decide. Take them all.
4 hats.
4 hats is nothing.
It's almost 2 babies, so how could it be nothing?
Yeah. Oh, I don't quite understand.
I do.
Mrs. Norton, wouldn't your sister-in-law like to try on a little hat?
Mrs. Norton, your sister-in-law, would not.
This hat is the only hat in the entire salon that I would recommend to you. The only one. It's just right for your features. It'll emphasize the ephemeral quality of your beauty.
Really? Well,
Go on, Claudia, try it on. You need a hat. And when David sees you in that, he won't try and stick you away in the country.
Maybe that is a good idea.
And this hat is only $66. A special price for Mrs. Norton's sister-in-law.
$66? It's so little.
Well, frankly, we're trying to lure you into buying all your hats here. And, of course, you understand that for $66, I mean, this isn't really an original. But it is one of our best models.
Well, I meant so little the hat, not so little the money.
You should wear little hats to match the tilt of your nose.
Go on, my lamb. Try it on.
Well, I'll try it on. No harm in that.
Just permit me...
But if you don't mind, I'd rather do it myself.
Of course, some ladies must do it themselves. But you're going to love this, Mrs. Norton.
I should think all that tulle and that large bow would be very becoming to you, Claudia.
How do you like it?
Stunning. Oh, really stunning.
Yeah, but that's not... Yeah, wait, that's backwards. Back to front.
You mean
It's on wrong? But it's so very becoming like that.
It's backward, but it's beautiful. Perfect, just like that. From now on, it must be worn backwards. All hats with bows in front must be worn with bows in the back. Why, it's an inspiration. A whole new flood of inspiration.
Are you sure it looks all right, Julia? I didn't think I looked like me at all.
It is drenchingly beautiful.
Still, I guess I better not get it. It's too expensive.
Too expensive? You shall receive it as a gift. I give it to you.
But
You wear it backwards, and between you and me, we shall start an entirely new vogue that will sweep the country.
It's a gift? Oh, I couldn't.
Go on, take it, my lamb.
With all my grateful thanks, the hat is yours. Yeah, backwards. Always backwards.
David, you home?
Been home for an hour. Where have you been?
The tea with Julia.
Lemon or cream?
Sugar. Hello, David.
Hello, sugar.
Oh, you haven't been home for an hour at all.
What do you mean I haven't?
Your ears are still red from the wind, and your cheeks are cool. It's nice.
What's in that box?
What box?
The box you're not carrying in your left hand.
Oh, that box. It's a hat box.
But your hat is in your right hand.
That is my old hat.
Aha, now we're getting someplace. You've bought a new hat.
Well, I didn't exactly buy it.
Not exactly, eh?
You see, I met Julia at Roland and Francis.
Who are they?
Hatters. Mad hatters, I really think. David, they charge $100 a hat.
You mean each hat? Well, put it on. Put it on, put on.
What's
It
the
better
hurry?
look good.
It doesn't have to look good. I didn't pay for it.
You didn't? Then
I was given it to lure me into being a customer.
are you kidding?
It is a joke, isn't it?
You took that hat under a false pretense.
But that's not the only reason. It was given me because I started a flood of inspiration when I put it on.
Oh, sounds wet.
And because I'm drenchingly beautiful
Sounds
in it.
very wet.
Well, I like it. Whether or not you'll think so.
Oh, drink to me only with thine hat, darling. Put it on, put
You're
it on.
really curious, aren't you?
If it looks nice, we'll go down and pay the man for it.
We'll do nothing of the sort. It was a present. He'd be insulted. David, one thing first.
What now? Am I never going to see this gift horse of a hat?
I told Julia about the house in Eastbrook.
What'd she say?
She thinks she knows the place. If it's an old salt box, it must be a beautiful house, she says.
Julia has excellent taste.
She liked his hat, too. Just remember that. Anyway, Julia would like you to talk to Hartley before you do anything about the house.
Why?
Because she says he might have some very good business advice to offer you. He knows a lot about investing in real estate. David, the farm is a real estate, isn't it?
Yes, darling, it is real estate. I'll call Hartley tomorrow and lunch with him. No harm in hearing what he has to say.
Would you be influenced by it?
I might.
Whew, that's a load off my mind. Now I'll put on the hat.
Ah, and put a load right back on it, huh?
Julia says when you see me in this hat, you'll even change your mind about the farm.
Do you want me to? Don't worry. Nothing will change it now that I know you want it, too.
I don't think you're so smart after all. There. How do I look? Well, what's so funny?
You look like a milkmaid all dressed up.
David!
Oh, darling, it's silly. It'll scare the daylights out of the cows.
It's not for the cows. David, don't you like it?
Well...
Well?
Of course I like it. You look wonderful. Very glamorous.
I do?
Like a Christmas tree.
Oh, I hate you.
Turn around.
Why?
Claudia, you've got that hat on backwards.
Backwards is frontwards for this hat.
I beg your pardon?
Backwards is what started the flood.
But I think you've got it on backwards.
Oh, you.
But I like you best of all. Backwards, frontwards, backwards. Any old way. Come here, hat.
All right, hat. Careful, David. You'll knock it off.
Who cares about a hat?
Not me, darling. Not me.
This broadcast of Claudia was supervised and directed by William Brown Maloney. The friendliest house on the block is usually the house with plenty of Coke in the refrigerator. That's the house that kids like to stop at, the house the neighbors like to visit. Yours can be such an inviting, hospitable spot if you keep the refrigerator well stocked with Coca-Cola. You can still get this matchless way to hospitality for only 5 cents. Mighty little to pay, you'll agree, for the pause that refreshes. Every day, Monday through Friday, Claudia comes to you, transcribed, with the best wishes of your friendly neighbor who bottles Coca-Cola. So listen again tomorrow at the same time.
Boy, that's a whole different type of commercial, isn't it? Stop by our house, you're not going to find Coca-Cola. You'll find Dr. Pepper. You know, you won't find any Dr. Pepper on our webpage, classicradio.stream, but you will find our links to our social media. You'll also find information on building a classic radio collection of your own. You can contact me there and hear our shows on demand, which you can also hear anywhere podcasts are served by searching Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Please thank this radio station and support their advertisers. It's their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be here each and every time we roll around. And tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the radio dial. Classic Radio Theater on your favorite radio station.